here. Next keynote will be the first remote keynote. It's Brent from Umee, and he will tune in live from New York, I guess.
Hey everyone, can you hear me? Hello, testing. Oh, wonderful. Hey everyone, really great to be here. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me remote. I wish I could have been there in person to see everyone, but wasn't able to make it this time around. And the organizers were graceful enough to allow me to present remotely. So I'll be giving a talk on Umee, on bridging the debt markets to crypto. Um, a quick introduction about myself. So I'm Brent. I'm the founder of Umee. Umee is a cross-chain DeFi protocol that interconnects between the Cosmos and the Ethereum blockchain. And we're building many DeFi primitives with that further goal of bringing this entire debt markets, the broader debt ecosystem into crypto, while also retransforming them and changing them to make them a bit more efficient and just better for societal benefits. So in 2008, 2009, we saw close to $50 trillion of value disappear from existence. All this value just got destroyed and disappeared poof. It really kind of puts things in perspective for us these last few weeks with the crypto downturn. Um, but that being said, that value destruction was due to a broken bond market. MBS and other types of bonds were non-transparent. The value shifted away from each other. There wasn't a public ledger to track this value. So, why are we talking about bonds? Why do we care about bonds? They're kind of this, people view them as this sort of boring, opaque topic that isn't as relevant to us in crypto. They have nothing to do with crypto. The truth of the matter is that the bond markets are already in crypto. People just don't realize it yet. Yield farming, yield aggregators, TVL, AUM, DeFi liquidity pools, structured products, platforms like MakerDAO, Compound, Savings Rate, stablecoin issuance. These are all forms of fixed income instruments that are basically reincarnated in crypto format. And so today I'll talk about Umee's mission of bridging the debt markets to crypto, as the debt markets are the largest market in the world. And I think that crypto is in many ways, the solution to a lot of, if not all of the problems that we see in TradFi. Next slide, please. So I'll talk about the vision, mission, and the platform that we're using to building this. So the vision is that we're here to rebuild all markets in DeFi. To do this, we're going to need a few things. We're going to need scalability, interoperability, and privacy. So from that perspective, scalability means we need a unified protocol like IBC to allow for fast finality transfers. In a financial system, transfers. You look at something like Visa that's processing hundreds of thousand transactions in a day. Um, we need something equally scalable in crypto. Also, interoperability is key. So being able to talk between one blockchain and another is a major component to how to make all this work, as well as instantiating privacy, whether it be ZK Snarks, Plonk, or some sort of secured execution environment. These are prerequisites to, bring traditional markets, in fact, all markets, into a crypto DeFi ecosystem. The mission of Umee, in order to fulfill that vision, we are building many cross-chain borrowing and lending tools. We're building primitives for allowing these types of DeFi primitives to evolve. We're building crypto debt primitives such as CDPs for issuing different instruments to further expound upon this vision. The platform we're using, Umee is built on the Cosmos SDK. The Umee blockchain is configured in the Cosmos network. We also have a high reliance on Ethereum. We're figuring out some of the interoperability dynamics between Cosmos and Ethereum. Additionally, I want to say that we're looking at this problem from a very multi-chain perspective. What this means is that we're looking to integrate L2 solutions, sidechain architectures, and alternative base layer protocols as well. The reason for this is that we want Umee to be a universal platform, something where, when you use Umee, you do not need to worry about which chain you're on. You just need to leverage assets from one chain, borrow another, and you essentially get access to to the different tokens in these ecosystems. Next slide, please. So, what is the state of the current blockchain ecosystem? People are probably talking a lot about, this recent crypto dump. Terra absolutely comes to mind. So when you look at Terra, the collapse of this was basically a result of a misunderstanding of risk. So you look at Terra, what do you see? Terra was basically a way to manage assets and liabilities using crypto. Um, every time UST was minted, a liability was created on the balance sheet. On the asset side, you had Luna. You also had things like Bitcoin, AVAX, BNB, USDT, USDC, all assets that are held by the Luna Foundation Guard. The biggest problem for Terra is that the debt could be instantly liquidated for so you call equity in the chain. And you can think of equity as a form of the Luna tokens, later BTC as well, because it's an asset on their books. But no debt market should work this way. Debt is supposed to be outstanding. When you have a 30-year loan, a mortgage, it's outstanding and it can't get immediately liquidated for the equity in the home. So when you look at the system, Terra is basically broken mathematics. You also created UST and you staked it on a savings protocol like Anchor. And so Anchor was designed as a risk-free rate, but a problem is that they were offering 20% as a risk-free rate. This is, not possible in finance. So there's this concept of you can't get something out of nothing. When value is created somewhere, it's taken from somewhere else. There's no free lunch, and it's a zero sum game when it comes to economics. So um, there, there's there's never a situation where you can actually borrow at 3% and lend at 20%. The logic is broken. And so let's dive into math. Anchor was a weighted no need to switch to the slides. So Anchor was a weighted average of proof of stake yields. And this weighted average of proof of stake yields was supposed to be subsidizing um, the UST deposit rates. The problem is that there is an additional component of a yield reserve, and that was used to keep the yields at such a high 20% APY. And that's where the biggest problem was happening. UST was minted to prop up that 20% savings rate to a point where it was unsustainable. And more UST was, being created and it was cycled through. This resulted in a broken protocol where money kept being cycled through, and we eventually saw this collapse. So where are we now? Now we're in a bear market. So in a bear market, people are a bit more, cautious, a bit more paranoid. Does this bridge work? Does the centralized solution work? One example is USDT fully backed? There was a time where people USDT was being depegged from the US dollar. The sentiment is that there's a lack of trust in the crypto ecosystem. People are also looking at something like Lido. For example, staked ETH was trading at a lower price than regular ETH. Aave pools were, at risk of being, liquidated. Um, and this was a result of people realizing that with staked ETH, they lacked the optionality of exchanging that staked ETH for normal ETH, and they realized that in a bear market, optionality is key when it comes to your crypto. So, what is my conclusion from the current state of crypto? I think that Crypto is broken. Uh, there's currently no real way to manage trust and risk preferences related to different DeFi protocols, related to different, assets like USDT, staked ETH. And right now, yield farming is just, it maximizes on the Ponzinomics of a way to sustain a market. And it acts as more of a short term stimulus, not a long term solution for how crypto and DeFi should be used. Next slide, please. So, I mentioned crypto today is broken. What is one way to solve the brokenness? I think the answer lies in one of the most important concepts, if not the most important concept in economics and finance, which are interest rates. So, why are interest rates important? Um, Interest rates are a way to measure the value of time. And when you think of the world, when you think of like life is the one defining principle that is prevalent in all of life is time, time itself. And interest rates are the only way to measure time for long periods of history. So the way you can think about it is that every investor has a preference for time value of money. Sophisticated investors base this on the cost of funds that they borrow at, and they'll discount their investments based off of that cost of funds. Retail investors have an internal rate preference. It's generally really high. They look to like 90% APY. They want to get a 2x return as opposed to putting their money in a bond that yields 5% annually. You can also think of it from the perspective of someone from the poverty line. So, someone in poverty might actually have a negative rate preference. They'd actually prefer a dollar today as opposed to $1.50 tomorrow because they need to buy food. This is why things such as pawn shops or check cashing systems work, where they charge a 60% APY, but you get your money today to buy food instead of having to wait to get your money next week. The other extreme can also exist for hedge funds. So with hedge funds, they might want to, borrow from their prime broker at Fed funds plus 10 basis points and invest in a strategy that can earn them Fed funds plus 50 basis points. Excuse me. And VCs are similar. They raise from endowments at 2 and 20, and they get an explicit mandate to get it 1 out of 10 winners to earn 100x return. So effectively, they're borrowing money at 1,000% over the life of the fund. Everyone is sensitive to their own internal rate preferences and their own measure of time value. Crypto is no different. So in crypto, someone would be happy to borrow stable coins at 50% interest rate in a bull market to catch a 200 to 500% gain. All coins have this rate preference, and they're carefully adjusted based on the emissions rates. The problem is that crypto does not have a market to value this time, this time value of crypto assets. And protocols kind of just own up to their own protocol risk, and there's no real world way of measuring this risk. So the way you can think of interest rates is that they always tell a story. They are a living, breathing indication of risk in a system. When there's a war, when there's interest rate change, when there's political strife, interest rates shift. When there's a pandemic, this results in changes in the interest rate environment. And interest rates always tell a story of the perceived risks. It's a basis of how and it can be a basis for how we establish, risk in the crypto ecosystem. Let's take that USDT example. If if there's a way to measure risk for USDT, we can actually give indications of how likely it should be to lose its peg. We can establish a basis for credit. Same with Lido and staked ETH. If we have a basis for credit on how we measure the risk of Lido losing its peg for staked ETH, that is a way to establish, certain forms of risk dynamics in relationship to these assets. The same applies to Terra. Terra is offering a, quote unquote risk-free 20%. Um, if we have a term structure of interest rates to measure, the risk of Terra, we'll actually be able to have a sense on, oh, is it really a risk-free 20%, or is there like a 50% chance that this protocol is going to, suffer a downturn? All of this can be measured. This same concept applies to protocols like MakerDAO, Compact, Curve, Uniswap. You can also apply it to bridges like Wormhole or XLR or other bridging mechanisms to measure the riskiness of, how you should perceive the effectiveness of this platform. Um, Looking at this graph, you can see that interest rates reacted throughout history. During certain high rate environments, you have people's perception of what their internal rate preference for money should be. You see that during the pandemic, rates were artificially lowered by the government to keep economic development happening, and you can see right now rates are rising due to hyperinflation. The key message is that these rates always tell a story, and they give an indication on how the world should be viewing risk in a macroeconomic perspective. And this same applies to crypto. Crypto is effectively a new and improved way of looking at finance and economics. Next slide, please. So I'll talk a bit about what we're building at Umee. So next month, we'll be releasing a leverage module. So this is our Cosmos SDK-based leverage module. It's used for allowing Cosmos assets for borrowing and lending. This includes Atom, Osmo tokens, Juno, Umee, and many more. Any IBC asset will be used for leveraging to be able to borrow other assets, including stablecoins and other IBC assets. So we want this to be the official money market of the Cosmos ecosystem. This will define how leverage is created in Cosmos and how different borrowing and lending applications can interact with AMMs like the Osmoses of the world, the Crescents, the SIF chains, and create this cohesive DeFi ecosystem throughout Cosmos based on IBC. We have this a powerful Oracle system. So, in our development of this this money market platform, we realized that there's not a great Oracle solution in Cosmos right now. Chainlink isn't really supporting IBC assets effectively at the moment. They're focused a bit more on the Ethereum ecosystem. We think that protocols like Band are not doing a good job of supporting various IBC assets. And so, we want to develop our Oracle to be, this platform that can support other IBC assets, and we're putting a lot of resources and support and just expanding that Oracle side of the equation to make sure that there's a very useful, powerful cross-chain Oracle out there. And the third point I'd like to make is that we're putting a lot of emphasis on native borrowing and lending. What does this mean? So a lot of people ask us, we have our Cosmos borrowing and lending applications, but we also have one on Ethereum. And so why did we build the network this way? The reason is that, excuse me, we wanted to allow folks to keep their assets on their native chain while being able to access other chains. So with this configuration, you can leverage assets on the Cosmos blockchain to borrow on Ethereum, and you can leverage assets on Ethereum to borrow on Cosmos, and you don't actually need to bridge your assets between the two chains in order to access the other one. This is effectively what can be known as a bridgeless borrowing and lending transaction. Instead of having to bridge your assets from one chain to another, you can natively access them without needing to rely on a bridge to wrap them to another chain. We think that this would be a major innovation to the ecosystem, and it helps folks access and adopt other chains without having to necessarily go through the processes of bridging your tokens across chain. Next slide, please. And so to touch upon what I talked about in the earlier slide on a term structure of interest rates, short term, we're focusing on cross-chain bond lending. Medium term, we want to build out that term structure of interest rates as I described previously, basically an interest rate curve for crypto. So here's a thought experiment you can think about. Let's say I took Ethereum and I locked it into a 30-day smart contract. And then I put this Ethereum into an AMM pool with spot Ethereum. So this is a great AMM pool because you have two mean reverting assets. You have limited and permanent loss. But what's special about this AMM pool is that it represents the time value of Ethereum for 30 days. You can take this AMM pool and expound it from 30 days to 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, 10 year, 30 years. And you effectively have what is known as a yield curve or a term structure of interest rates for crypto. The same can be applied to a Cosmos atom. So let's say you took a staked atom, maybe a staking derivative, and you locked it for 30 days, and you put it into an AMM pool with a spot atom. The value of that atom for 30 days is not only the opportunity cost of atom itself, but also a prediction or a perspective on what you think the staking yield is going to be for 30 days. Take this and extrapolate it to 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, et cetera, and you effectively have what we have coined a staking curve, basically a way to use proof of stake yield as a proxy for economic inflation. Proof of stake yield can be used to measure the value of time, and you can use proof of stake as a way to measure things that I described earlier, different forms of credit risk, different forms of trust that you have in a different DeFi ecosystem. This is the basis of what we're trying to build. We're trying to build the foundational structure for bringing the broader debt ecosystem into a crypto paradigm. And it's a step-by-step iterative process. So next slide, please. So I'd like to highlight our major testnet right now. So we have our Umee Mania testnet up and running. This is a incentivized testnet. The goal is to get as much TVL as possible. Users are incentivized to provide TVL. There's many faucets for accessing tokens to test out. This is a great way to test out IBC transfers, the supply and withdrawal functions, as well as borrow and repay. This is also a great way to test out bridging assets between blockchains and seeing how the overall functionality works. So far, we've gotten quite a bit of traction. There's close to 40 billion TVL. Right now, there have been 30 million transactions so far, and so far there's 120 unique wallet addresses. Umee Mania has been a very exciting opportunity to test out the leverage module for borrowing and lending Cosmos SDK based assets, and we are very much looking forward to the mainnet release. We think that this is going to bring a whole new level of activity into the Cosmos ecosystem, and we're just excited about the different possibilities that we have with this. Next slide, please. So we've been getting a lot of questions about stablecoins lately due to this terrible situation with the UST, and we've been getting questions from folks in the community about whether or not we're thinking about a stablecoin. And I'll put it this way: we think that there are a lot of advantages of using something like Umee. So think of something like Compound and MakerDAO. Technically, Compound and MakerDAO could be the same protocol. You can create a CDP that uses Compound C tokens like CDAI or CETH, as collateral for minting stablecoins. And the reason why they're not the same protocol is that they were built separately. But perceivably, in a Cosmos ecosystem, you could easily create a CDP using collateral tokens such as the Umee tokens to mint stablecoins. Additionally, there's the component that we have a Ethereum borrowing and lending as well. And because we have Ethereum borrowing and lending, this is a way to kind of diversify the exposure. Instead of minting an IBC-based stablecoin that's only exposed to Cosmos assets, we can also make it a multi-collateral system that includes Ethereum tokens as well. So definitely a lot to think about. No official decision from our end yet, but we're constantly researching how to do this and just different advantages and disadvantages of using a system to issue a stablecoin like this. So next slide, please. I wanted to thank everyone for listening. In this, with Umee, we have a short-term vision of building a cross-chain borrowing and lending platform. Midterm vision, we want to figure out how to bring a term structure of interest rates or a yield curve to the crypto ecosystem to better price risk. And long term, we want to build and transform the entire debt markets and capital markets into a crypto format. Earlier, I mentioned that $50 trillion of value was destroyed due to a broken bond market. We think that crypto could have prevented that. We think that if these primitives were built using open source technology and better infrastructure, it could have prevented an entire financial collapse. You just need good auditing. You just need well-hardened code that's been tested, code that's built in a way that's anti-fragile, and you could have prevented entire TradFi financial bust using this open source code that doesn't rely on centralized intermediaries. So on that note, thank you everyone, and open to questions.
Thank you, Brent. Can you hear me?
I can.
Perfect. Yeah, we actually just have time for one question. So, which assets do you plan to add to Umee next?
Certainly. So far there's Umee tokens, Osmo, Juno, as well as the Cosmos Atom. Be on the lookout for announcements. For our testnet, we added Terra. We added Luna. We're also looking at some fun meme tokens like the Chihuahua. We got our eyes set on things like Secret Network, Comdex, other assets throughout the Cosmos ecosystem. Anything IBC compatible. But the point of the matter is that we're able to add any IBC tokens, and we just want to be supportive of the Cosmos ecosystem and just figure out, how do we build the best borrowing and lending platform for any Cosmos SDK based token.
Thank you, Brent.